You are a creator. You create your career, your business. You create a family. You create your future. On the Results Driven Life by Design broadcast, get ready to hear from people from all walks of life and how they overcame the odds to create a life led by purpose and vision. Here's your host, Kia Arian.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's broadcast. I always begin by reminding you that your skills, your experiences, and your talents have been given to you for a reason. No one else has that unique combination, and no one else has your voice. You have a message that the world needs to hear. And so as you listen to today's show, I invite you to a greater vision for your life that resonates beyond what you do, but why you do it. Now, on today's show, I am very pleased to welcome Brooke Birkey. Brooke calls herself the law firm trainer, which means that she looks at the whole business just like a gym trainer who helps you work out the whole body. She has a special process and programs that maximize client experience and increase revenue. Her business is called Level Up Business Coaching. And with that, she focuses on two key areas for law firms: the intake process and reducing opportunity costs through efficient operations. Welcome, Brooke. So glad to have you here today.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
So, Brooke, I love how specific you are with what you do. You work with intake process and reducing opportunity costs through efficient operations. You also, I know that you also focus on other key areas like emotional intelligence and relationship marketing. So these are all like my jam. I love talking about those things because, I just, this is a conversation that I've been having with my audience, is that let's stop letting metrics and tracking and numbers dictate what we do. And let's look at operations, let's look at relationships, let's look at the emotional aspect of it. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. So tell me a little bit about that. And is it just law firms that you work with, or is it other businesses that you work with?
It's just law firms. So I've been working with and for law firms for about 20 years. I think my first real job was a secretary at a real estate law firm. And that was when I was like 18. And so I caught the bug very early. And so it's really interesting. A lot of law firm consulting is focused on the hard stuff like KPI development, strategic planning, and all of that is gold. I love it. 100%, you absolutely have to do it. And I integrate that into what I do as well. But most people aren't looking at the soft stuff, which is harder to define, but has these seismic implications on revenue and operations. And that's emotional intelligence, client management, communication strategies and skills. And you wouldn't know how much friction you can reduce in a law firm environment just by focusing on these types of skills, which increases client trust and ultimately gets better outcomes, both with your own internal culture and the client and their case. And so it's a win-win, but it has to be trained. It's not something that someone just happens on, just because you're good with people, and many people are have great people skills, but they're not trained in emotional intelligence. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. And the question that, and I agree with you on that, it's easier. From my observation, the reason for that is because it's the numbers, it's easier. They're black and white, right? You're able to control those better, zeros and ones. Yeah. This other stuff, the client communication, the soft skills, like you said, the emotional intelligence, it's just organic. There is no handle for it. And so I'm really curious, I think you can create frameworks to get better awareness and objective understanding of it, but it's always going to be a moving target, it seems.
Well, in some ways, yes, but in some ways you really can put a handle on it. We call it squishy skills that drive productivity. So it feels very squishy, like how you speak to somebody, how you approach conflict, and all of this. And those are skills that can be learned in training and then reinforced over time. But the more measurable outcomes come with time management. So here at Level Up, we say there are three core issues with law firms. Number one, emotional intelligence. Number two, client management. And number three, time management. So emotional intelligence is the first thing to address. Second is leveraging emotional intelligence for client management. And then the third is leveraging client management for time management. So once you have client management, really, you've got the wheels on, then you can start to set forth expectations about how people manage their time. Because the number one interrupter of productivity is probably clients. And then number two is probably lack of inter-team or interpersonal communication.
Yes, I love that. I love how you've integrated those together into an outcome that can be measured. I found in our process, so we focused on relationship marketing, relationship building through nurture marketing, through the programs that we do.
Yes.
And you want
I've seen the stuff. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. One of the things that is kind of creates resistance for people to kind of dive in to do the work, such as the print newsletters or anything else that kind of does that nurture marketing, is how can I measure it? Like, how can I measure it? And so we've also been working on creating, well, here's how you can measure it. We call it leading indicators and lagging indicators. So I love that time management, once you implement those things, now as a result, you can see that you measure that.
Yeah.
I've also seen leading indicators where it's like, well, measure how often you contact people, measure how many call to actions you have, measure, the offers that you have. Let's have a measure of those things and see 2, 3, 4, 5 months down the road what difference is making. So yes, those are handles we can put on it, and with the right framework, we can, it can be controlled. Let me ask you about emotional intelligence. So that's super, super interesting to me. So you said it starts with emotional intelligence and then goes to client management, so how you interact with clients and probably with anybody else that you're interacting with. And then that results in what you see, efficient time management and handling. So those are all really, like, we can have hour-long conversations on each of those.
Yeah, we could.
Tell me a little about what you define as emotional intelligence and maybe some examples.
Absolutely. So we start off with the concept of know me, know you. So the idea is the better that I understand myself, my own natural wiring, the way that I process and relate to the world, the more my awareness builds about how other people are wired, how they relate to the world, and how that may or may not be the same way that I do it. And conflict is really simplified as two people with valid concerns in competition, right? So let's say I have a valid viewpoint and you have a valid viewpoint, but they just don't align. And so we have to figure out how to deal with that. So part of using emotional intelligence in conflict specifically is saying, oh, okay, so let me try to understand how you view the world, how you process. And then I'm going to take how I process and see if we can find some common ground. So there's a bunch of indicators that you can use. One that I use all the time is introversion versus extroversion. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with those terms, introversion just means energy management that is best done alone or in small groups. So if I'm introverted, then I need to recharge by myself or with one person, like a spouse or a close friend or something, just to be around and relax. Extroverts, they feel depleted when they aren't around people. So the way they recharge is like at the end of a long workday, they're like, I'm going to go to a party, right? And so an example of conflict, and you can just take spouses because that's the easiest one. Let's say you have one spouse that's an introvert and one spouse that's an extrovert. And at the end of a long day, the introvert just wants to sit on the couch and watch TV with their best friend or their loved one. And the extrovert's like, let's go out, let's go to a party, let's go, to a place where there's crowds, and that creates conflict. So that's two very different ways of viewing the world, both valid, competing, right?
Yeah.
So the way you can build emotional intelligence, the first thing that I do with my students is I give them a personality assessment. And we review it, and then we start to talk about how our traits can be our best friend and how they can also get in our way, which means that the impetus for leveraging your own personality is on you. So recognizing how your natural wiring can really be a good thing for your work, but there's a very high chance that it can also be a bad thing. So empathy, that's really easy to relate to, right? Everybody knows what empathy is today. So somebody in intake, for example, with really strong empathy skills, they will have a really easy time connecting with people, but they have trouble separating their emotions from somebody else's trauma. Mm. And so they will be very tired at the end of the day if they don't have those boundaries in place. Mm. Somebody who is wired for process, very strongly wired for process, they are going to be more efficient than their counterparts, but they're going to have a harder time connecting with people. So knowing what makes up our own natural wiring and then deciding how we can leverage those things to be at our best.
I love all this. In fact, it's funny because this morning I was just thinking, kind of reflecting as I was getting ready, doing that inner work of knowing yourself. Mm-hmm. And being able to separate, like you said, I don't know if you said this or I thought this, but like you,
it's fine. Yeah.
When you do the work to understand yourself, there's this skill of kind of separating the emotion from it and not judging it, right? And always kind of being on the, why is this thought, this feeling coming up? Why am I reacting in this way? Mm-hmm. And most of the time, this is very kind of gratifying. And, like you said, depending on your personality, you like that kind of self-reflection. But sometimes it's like, why can't I just go through life not overthinking everything? Why do I have to put every action, every emotion, every thought under a microscope and, stand up? It's like, I just get tired of doing that, And so, and
Mhm.
I'm thinking this and then now, like I was listening to this podcast and almost like answered my question. Like that is how we're built. That's what we're built for, right? Okay. And then like you come on and you're like, that's what, this is what creates growth in people. And so the answer is to me, and I'm interested to hear your answer. That's what growth means. And if you are interested in growth, that's the work that you got to put in. But let me ask you this though, that's like a resistance. Like, I don't want to, like, it's tiresome to put the work. What is the resistance, or do you face resistance from the clients that you work with in, doing the inner work and the reflection?
I do. And, it just depends on the person. Some people are really excited and they, I would say most people are interested in it because nobody has ever framed it for this, like this before, for them like this before. But you do get folks who they reach a certain point and they are no longer willing to look any further. And that's okay too. Everybody has their points in personal growth, and you just got to work with what they're willing to do. And that's just humanity. That's all of us. And so you can't force anyone to go any further in personal growth than they want to. But I will say that especially with the teams that I train in intake and the legal teams, to the extent that they're willing to engage is the extent that they're willing to produce these outcomes for their business.
Mm.
And I often hear from them, I use this at home too. I use the skills that you taught me, I used with my spouse or with my mother or whatever. And I love hearing that. That's actually the ultimate thing for me, is when I hear that someone took it from the business perspective and said, I was able to use this for my personal relationships and to make my life better. I love that.
That's awesome. And
But
that's,
so to your point, it can be overdone, right? So we don't want to be navel gazers, and that means basically I'm just looking at my own belly button all the time, and I'm self-reflecting 100% of the time. There's a balance, right? And so we, like with anything in life, we have to find that balance so we don't overdo it. And also, I don't want to hear from team members, well, I'm wired this way, so I can't do this other thing. I'm like, no, you can. You just have to work harder at it, right?
yeah, that's so funny. Navel gazers. I love that.
Yeah.
That's true. There are, yeah. So thank you for saying that, because sometimes it feels like life is just this one big, sit and especially now in this culture of, meditation and mindfulness and self-awareness, everybody's like trying to find themselves and discover themselves.
Yeah. I think the focus when it becomes on yourself as the end goal versus what can I contribute to this business, or what can I contribute to the society or this marriage or this family, whatever it is. If your focus is on you, then you're, as the ultimate outcome, then you're probably not in the right space.
I love that. That's a excellent point. Thank you for saying that. It really is about your impact, right? Your purpose. What is it that at the end of the day, those are the gifts that you have, and you're cultivating those gifts by, maybe the self-reflection is the cultivating, but there's also times of rest and times of then giving from what you have. So I think that's a great point. Um, so tell me how that translates to time management. Like, how do you get that? So I'm interested to hear that.
So you want me to start with emotional intelligence and make the thread all the way through?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just take a really finite example. So in emotional intelligence, we do what's called people mastery. And so that means just understanding how to your clients and what they're going through. And as one of the sessions in people mastery is the 5 stages of grief. And no matter what kind of law you're in, and unless it's like adoption, there's probably a client in crisis, right? They probably lost something. So everybody who has lost something, divorce, personal injury, is going through the 5 stages of grief. And so understanding where they are and how they process is key to understanding how to manage them. So let's say, for example, you have a client that was really communicative in the beginning, but now they've fallen off the face of the planet. And maybe they're in the depression phase of the 5 stages of grief. So what you do with all of your clients to avoid that is to kind of manage expectations about communication in the very beginning. Here's what we expect from you. Here's what we need in order to make your case happen. And then to continue to reinforce. So this is where there's a nexus between what I do and marketing, what you do, is that you have to provide the brand and the message many times before it really resonates. And so it's the exact same thing with client management. It's not enough to tell them at the beginning of the case, here's our communication policy, if you even have one, and you should if you don't. You have to reinforce that maybe have 5 bullet points that you want to reinforce every single conversation that you have with the client. Communication policy, cross-marketing, referrals, expectations about the case, things like that have to be reiterated multiple times, especially for someone who's going through trauma. So what happens with trauma is our brains kind of shut down and have limited functionality. And it depends on the extent of the trauma. So let's just take personal injury. You're going to be through the 5 stages of grief in about 8 hours if it's a fender bender. But if it's a wrongful death case, it could be years, right? And so just kind of getting a sense of where the client is at, communicating with them in their best style, which means you have to get to know them a little bit and understand, are they an internal processor? Are they an external processor? Do they communicate best by phone, email, over video? And then meeting them exactly where they're at. So the key to great client management is trust. And these are all the ways that we earn their trust is we demonstrate to them that we are taking the time to see them as an individual. We walk shoulder to shoulder with them through the process, and we practice empathy and boundaries, which make the client feel cared for. Both empathy and boundaries, they're together. They're a sandwich.
I think that it's really insightful how you have brought that and to help people to understand it and to integrate it into their day-to-day. I mean, truly, it really is connecting. And you're right. People who work with lawyers, most of the time, they have some crisis that they're trying to manage. So there's a lot of emotional management that has to happen. And, that's one of the key parts of relationship marketing that we define too, is that you have to have the trust of your client to get them the results they want. If they're in indecision or they're dealing with emotional baggage of making the next step that you need, like their signature on, or you need their movement on, that's not going to happen. So it's, and it's super, super important. And like, it's almost like, why haven't law firms done more of this? I mean, I was interacting with a law firm just for a friend, and the lack of those human skills was like, it was like appalling. But you know what? They're all going to be out there. I mean, we can't, rage over it, but more law firms need that. So I'm glad to hear how you've done that and been able to really make it so that it's understandable and integratable into the law firm. So tell me more. And then that moves to client management and then time management.
Yes. So just a quick comment. Interesting on attorneys is that almost every single personality assessment I've done on attorneys is they turn out to be a high J on the Myers-Briggs, which is the critical thinking. And I'm not just talking like 80%, I'm talking like 99% or 100%, which is very unusual just in the general population. And that just kind of speaks to the way that you train your brain. And my theory is that it's because of law school. Like you may have been naturally predisposed to have high critical thinking skills, but then law school kind of sends them into overdrive.
So real quick, for those who may not be familiar, the Myers-Briggs has the four indicators. The J is the J, and what's the opposite of the J?
P is prospecting, or prospecting.
P is prospecting, and then J is
judging.
Okay. Yes. And the P is more like intuitive, and the judging is more like.
So P is actually more of a processing style of test and assess. So critical thinking is more gather, execute. And prospecting is test, assess, gather data. Test, assess, gather data. Test, assess, gather data. So it's really a processing style. And it's just one of the 4 letters, which we could probably spend an hour on.
I know.
That one by itself. But that's just another example of using emotional intelligence at work, is understanding that attorneys have outsized critical thinking skills, and that's how their brain is wired, right? So once you've earned the client's trust and you have set expectations for them and they believe that you care about them, then you can sort of manage your time in a way that gives the clients what they need, but also gives you time to get everything done that you need. So of course, for all of our flat fee services, time on desk is a really big deal. And so there's a couple of client types. I won't go into all of them today, but one is the rambler and one is the withholder. And so they both have communication issues. One, you can't get to stop calling you, and one you can't get a hold of, right? So one example is, and I'm going to write about this in my weekly email. So all of you who are getting that, well, I guess it'll be in the past now, but one of the things that you can do as a legal team member is once you've earned the client's trust, you can say, you know what, Mrs. Jones, thank you so much for calling me today and keeping me apprised. You are such a great communicator, and I really appreciate that about you. why don't we have a 15-minute call every single Tuesday that's just for you and me? And that will be our weekly touch point. I will love to speak to you, and I will look forward to catching up with you every single week. It's going to be 15 minutes. Can you do that Tuesdays at 10 o'clock? Okay, fantastic. So unless something's really, really important, like a high priority, we'll wait until next Tuesday to speak. I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait. Right. And so that's empathy. So that's kind of letting them know, I appreciate your communication, but I can't talk to you every day. You can't interrupt me every single day, especially if you're just calling to talk about your dog and your house and your sister and, all of these other things. But what I would love to do is I care about you and I want to talk to you every single week. Let's just make it once a week. Right. And then I can focus on your case too, because if I'm being interrupted, then I'm not going to really be able to focus on what you're asking me. Right. So that's that client management and time management intersection. And once you've got client management under control, then you can take everything else, because, you and I know that client communications are the most important thing to earning trust. Well, we just can't let them get out of hand. So once that is handled, then you can start time blocking. You can start prioritizing as a team what you want to get done for the week. You can set aside a certain time to write your demands every single week. You can set aside a certain time to write your medical summaries every week. And I'm just doing PI because it's easy. And do you see how those kind of feed into each other? Once you have client management under control, then your schedule is much more wide open and you can really focus on these proven strategies. And everybody works differently. And so it ties back into emotional intelligence. You have to know, what's your working style? Do you process big to small or small to big? When are you most creative? When are you most linear in the day? And so that goes back to that self-reflection. And so in our training program, we build individual time strategies and then we build team time strategies so that everything gets covered and everything's working in harmony, while still honoring the individual's autonomy.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that, Brooke. And I just want to point out to the listeners that, I've had my business, my agency for 20 years. And the things that Brooke is talking about, I learned the hard way. But I do remember, and these are things that you don't, like, as a person, as a business owner, you think that you should naturally know these things, but you don't. And
Yeah.
I remember specific times in my journey where I butt up against these interpersonal things. Like I had to figure out how to talk to my team about their compensation or changing the compensation plan, or I had to deal with a grumpy client or those things. And I spent way too much time trying to figure out what to do, or I just ignored the situation to the point where
Yeah.
where it just, like, I mean, you think you mentioned opportunity cost, where it could have been something that would have resulted in growth and whatever, but because I didn't want to deal with it, because I didn't know how to best deal with it, it cost me. I lost something that I could have gained, and it's one of these things, Brooke. The what you bring to businesses and law firms is one of those things. It's like that quote that says, "Big doors swing on small hinges." Even though it's not as apparent as that big lead conversion number or that CRM or how many phone calls come in or the reviews that you're getting, or it's with your wins, your case results, it may not be. It's kind of quietly in the background, but it's one of those key things that is really moving the needle, not just for clients and the results you get for them, but internally within your own team and with how you interact with one another. And those are really, really key areas where it's easy to put off and say, I don't have the time, I don't have the budget, I'll deal with this later. And I'm not trying to make it sound like a commercial here, but just really point out the importance of what you're doing.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I know law firm owners, they love numbers. And, based on some of the research that I've been doing, a small law firm, so under 10, can waste up to 6 figures in opportunity cost a year. And, it's hard to measure, but the data is out there. And some of the things that we measure is, case times and outcomes. And we do qualitative measurement and things like that. So there are data points available. But you're right. It is harder to measure. It feels more squishy, but it moves the needle significantly. Like, which one of us couldn't use an extra $100,000 in our pocket? Right.
Exactly. Well, I think you've done a brilliant job of really marrying the right, left brain, the hard skills, soft skills, the data, the intuitive sort of, and that's really where I think society, economy, culture, people. I really think it's moving towards that. It's not so black and white, hard, grind it out and, follow the theory. Like it's not that anymore. The world's changing. And so these things are really important to address. I'm gonna kind of ask you some fun questions. We're kind of wrapping up towards the end of our interview, but I have some fun questions just to get to know Brooke a little bit.
Yeah, sounds good.
Little juicy questions, and then after that, I know you have some special offers to present and how to get in hold of you. I want to know how people can get on your email list. So because I know you share a lot of great information on your email list and all the good stuff. So we'll ask that too. All right,
Sounds good. Let's do it.
so let's tell me this.
Yes.
What would you say? What do your clients enjoy most about working with you?
I think my clients would say that all of our training programs are a lot of fun and upbeat and meaningful and interactive. And so I never get up in front of a class in a training and just talk at them. I pull everybody out. I ask people's opinions. I have slide decks and things that I can show them for visuals, trying to appeal to different learning styles. And then sort of on the operations side, we make everything easy. We really firmly believe that when we're engaged with the client, that we are part of their administrative staff. And so I have an amazing executive assistant named June. He's fantastic, and he takes care of all the small details. And so what we aim is to respect everybody's time at all times and to make it easy to schedule with us and make it clear what everyone's expected of, and just so that they don't have to worry about the small things during their trainings, just building that emotional intelligence and skill set.
Yeah, that's so important. Like if it's not fun, no one wants to do it. Like if it's boring, just leave. So good for you. That's awesome. So tell me, what would you say has been the biggest success in your business or your career?
The biggest success, we've had a couple of client successes that I'm really proud of. That the wider scale investments, the firm-wide assessments, and training from marketing and sales integration to intake to case management to attorneys to the remarketing. So following the entire life cycle of the client. And I love those results because we're able to significantly contribute to their bottom line, but also to make things easier for them to scale. So it's really fun for me to post training, post engagement, to see through continued contact or on social media to see how they're continuing to grow and scale and add new team members and continue to succeed. And that just makes me so happy.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately it's the scaling, right? It's not just growing. It is
Yeah.
to have the capacity for more, because that's where a lot of professional services, including attorneys, agencies, they stumble. So that's terrific. What would you say is the biggest factor or the top 2 or 3 factors that contributed to the success? Now, this could be, maybe not so much your law firm, the law firms that you're helping your clients, but yourself personally, professionally.
So I am constantly in coaching myself. Every single month, every single week, I'm doing my own outside coaching, and that is a game changer, because when you have a business, it's hard to see 5 feet in front of your face. You can easily see things for other people and other people's businesses and connect the data points, and it's very simple. But when it's your own, then it's like being blind practically.
I agree.
And so that is huge. Also, just being willing to be flexible about where the market is going. So, a business plan only goes so far. You can take a business plan, you can say, this is where I want to be, but the market can change in 5 seconds, and you have to be flexible and introduce new things, like for example, recruiting. I wasn't really doing recruiting for a while. And then a couple of my clients asked me if I was doing it, and I built a really robust vetting program that has benefited some law firms with some great candidates who are now working for them. And so it's kind of being willing to say, yeah, I will try that. I will do it. And then put in the work to make it succeed. Do the research, do the steps, get the feedback, connect the data. So after the idea, the results are always hard work, but you have to be willing to do both. You have to be willing to try new things and also put the work to make it successful.
Yeah, I love that. And that really is kind of the key thing that drives entrepreneurs is, what's the problem that I can solve? And then solve it. So that's awesome. Okay. So on the flip side of that, what would you say has been the biggest flop in your career business?
Oh goodness. I started a few businesses that pretty much failed back when I was living in DC. I had this great idea for a a grocery shopping and meal preparation business. And basically what I was advertising is that I would get to know you. I would get to know your eating habits and what kind of food that you like. And then I would go grocery shopping for you. I would put it all away and then I would make your meals. I mean, it was a great idea. And I think I had one discovery call and it went absolutely nowhere. It's just, I didn't know at that point. I mean, this was years ago. I knew nothing about marketing, knew nothing about anything really. I just had an idea and just thought that maybe it would catch on. But I mean, maybe in retirement, I'll revisit that idea. I still like it.
That's good. I think it definitely has merit. So, but you gotta like cooking, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So tell me, what was the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome in your journey to where you are today, and how did you do that?
So many good questions. I think the biggest challenge to getting to where I am today is learning how to, again, with emotional intelligence, get outside my natural skill set. And so, because when you're a business owner, it really doesn't matter what your natural wiring is. You have to do everything. You have to be the visionary, the implementer, the results tracker, the creative, the marketing. And personally, I am pretty much equally left and right brained. I like to be in both spaces, but I have a hard time switching from one to the other. And so working on that brain flexibility and being more flexible has probably been my biggest challenge in owning a business. Because you have to do it. If you're going to do anything, you have to do everything and you have to do it well. Right?
Yeah, that's good. So insightful. I think you're absolutely right. And I love what you said, that you have to train your brain. Your brain is trainable. It's flexible. It's, they call it neuroplasticity, where
Yes.
you can fire off new things to train yourself to be able to do those things. And at some point, and I'll add this too, I think when you go through the seasons of your career and your life, you get to a point where you say, okay, I know I can do all these things. I've trained my brain to do all these things, but now what is it that I want to do? And I think the key is having the freedom then to choose what you want to do. Whereas, the unfortunate is if you haven't set yourself up for that freedom, right? To be able to do because of financial or because of obligations, relationships, whatever it may be, you don't have complete freedom to choose the thing you want to do. Now that you know, you can do whatever you want. And the only criteria is, what is it do I love? I don't know. Do you agree with that or no?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the next level. And I look at that as being the reward for putting on all the hard work in the initial stages of the business. Is once you get there, you came by it honestly. You got, and by the way, if you've done everything, then you have insight on how to hire, because if you really know what it's like to be in those trenches.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right. Let me ask you one more question, and then to wrap it up, and then I'd love for you to share how listeners could either get in touch with you or stay connected with you. So whatever you want to share with them. So Brooke, what is the one business secret that if you shared with me, you'd have to kill me?
I don't want to kill you, Kia. I really don't want to kill you. I would say that, and we've already talked about this today, that emotional intelligence really is the shortcut. A lot of people see it as just one more thing that I don't have time to do. But once you lay that groundwork, then everything else is easier, takes less time. It really is the shortcut. And I tell my students in intake this too: if they can figure out what their client's chief concern is, then that's the shortcut to the sale, right? Because they can share that with them. So that's just one microcosm example of the broader concept. Is it really, really is the shortcut, I promise.
Oh, 100%, because people make decisions based on their emotion and they justify later. I mean, emotion drives everything. I just heard a quote today. The famous physicist Richard Feynman, he said, could you imagine if, the reason why physics is what it is today and how we're able to discover is because atoms, photons, neurons, they all behave predictably. Could you imagine if they had emotions? If atoms and photons and had,
oh my gosh, yeah,
we'd be in chaos.
So, all over the place. Yeah.
Right. So emotions are energy and they do drive everything, and having emotional intelligence really is the key to next level. So thank you for sharing that. So Brooke, how can people stay in touch with you and connect with you?
Please do. Yes. So my website is leveluplawfirmcoaching.com. There's a little link at the top that says get a diagnostic. So if you're looking for a diagnostic in any area that we've talked about, I'd love to speak with you. My email address is also brooke@leveluplawfirmcoaching.com. I know it's a mouthful. A couple of things that we offer to anyone who has listened to the podcast is that we do a free secret shopping call. So otherwise known as an intake audit. So basically call your firm and share how your firm is doing with emotional intelligence and sales. And we do the same for client communications, which would be a recorded call. So those are absolutely free. All you have to do is mention this podcast, and we would be happy to do that for you.
Well, that is a wonderful gift. And I really encourage, if you are an attorney listening to this and you have your law firm, take advantage of that. Like that, there's not a whole lot of free these days, and that sounds super valuable. So thank you, Brooke, for offering that. Thank you for coming on the show, for your insights, and for the information that you shared. And I encourage my listeners to really take advantage of those offers.
Thank you, Kia. I really enjoyed it.
And thank you to the listeners for tuning in. Again, my name is Kia Arian, reminding you that your skills, your talents have been given to you for a reason. There are people who stand to benefit from what you offer, and there are those who you're not called to help. Focus on the former group. They're waiting for you.
If you enjoyed this broadcast, subscribe to the show, connect with Kia on LinkedIn, and let her know what inspired you. This broadcast was brought to you by Zine, a marketing and brand development agency that helps attorneys, entrepreneurs, and professional service providers create raving clients who love them, stay with them, and tell others about them. Visit zinemarketing.com/newsletter to sign up and receive the Breathe Life newsletter, a print publication of Zine.